Hi everyone, I'm Joanna Penn from thecreativepenn.com and today I'm here with Mark McGuinness. Hi Mark.
Hi, Joe.
Great to have you on. So just as a way of introduction, Mark is a poet and the author of Resilience, Facing Down Rejection and Criticism on the Road to Success. He also works as a professional speaker and coach on creativity and productivity. And today we're talking about how creatives and other introverts can get into professional speaking. So Mark, first up, how do you define introvert and how does that relate to your own personality?
Well, the definition I quite like, because it's not too restrictive, is an extrovert is somebody who gets energy from other people, and an introvert is somebody who gets energy from time alone. So what I like about that, because I don't think it's as black and white as some people are good in social situations and others are not. It's not the same as shyness and confidence. So, what I like about that is, and this fits my own experience, I can be very engaged with an audience in a social situation. I can be very outgoing. But if I do it too long, I start to feel a bit tired and like I need to go and sit in the corner with a book. So in terms of my own, so one thing I've noticed, say if I'm talking to a big audience, then I'll make sure I have plenty of downtime before and afterwards. Mm. And if I'm coaching a client on that who I know is an introvert, I'll say, well, look, you can be extrovert when you're up on stage, but just make sure you've got that time to recharge afterwards and also to get centered before you go out.
No, absolutely, and I agree with you. That's kind of my definition too. And so why did professional speaking attract you as a person who feels that way?
It didn't. I had no choice.
Explain.
Well, I think actually most of us realise that at a certain point in your career, whatever you're doing, it would be advantageous to your career for you to be able to stand up on your hind legs and persuade other people of the value of your ideas and your point of view. So I don't think I'm unique in that. I just realised if I can learn to do this, it's going to open a lot of doors that would be closed otherwise. So in my case, originally I was a psychotherapist, and I was invited to go back onto the psychotherapy training course that I'd done and assist the main trainer, which was actually a really good way because I got to watch him, which was John Eaton. I got to watch John present, and then he would to begin with, he'd just involve me in discussions. He would turn around and say, so what do you think, Mark? And I'd be like, and then I would have to say something. And then eventually he would say, well, you've seen me do this bit 3 times. Why don't you do the first half hour this morning, or the segment after the coffee break? So I did a little bit here and a little bit there, and I got more involved in the discussions and conversations, and got some really helpful coaching from John while I was doing it. So and then at the time it meant I ended up being on the list for supervising people one-to-one, so it led to more work and opportunities from that. People knew who I was. It quite literally put me out there in front of the audience.
So it fell into your lap. But now, how many years later are we talking now?
Ooh, goodness me. That was about 99. Yeah, 98, 99.
Wow, so that's a decent amount of time. So, and what percentage would you say now of your business it comes from professional speaking?
What percentage involves doing it, or
your income?
I wouldn't say it's a huge amount, partly because I've been prioritising one-to-one work and writing books. But at one stage, it was virtually the whole business. It was about 80, 90%. So probably these days it's about 10, 15%.
I want to move to that as well, that kind of percentage. I think that's a good percentage for introverts because you get to spend your time alone, right?
It is good because I do... I love writing, but, really, even if you're quite introverted, which I am, after several hours of doing it, it's nice to talk to a human being. And I love doing the one-to-one coaching work with clients. So quite often my day is I'll write in the morning, and then in the afternoon I'll coach clients, particularly if they're in the States, because then they're awake, which always helps. But it's also nice, two or three times a month to actually stand up in front of an audience and get out of the house and go and talk to people. So yeah, I enjoy that too. It's a good mix.
And what type of professional speaking? Is it keynotes? Is it full day workshops? What type is it?
Mostly it's training workshops. So that's typically a full day. Sometimes these days I'm asked to do more conferences as well, so that's shorter presentations. And so in a training workshop I'll present for a bit, and then we'll have a discussion, and then I'll get them to do something, then we'll feedback on that. So it's not just me, fortunately, not just me lecturing at people for 8 hours a day, but a conference presentation is much more, I'm there on stage for an hour, 45 minutes or so, and it's a different type of presentation then.
And how did you decide on the specific topics, or what topics are they, and how did you decide on the topics that you speak on?
Well, it used to be psychotherapy. I don't train that these days. Usually it's something to do with creativity and professional skills for creatives. So time management for creative people, that was originally an ebook, and I started getting demand for a workshop, so I've done that lots of times. How to motivate creative people, that's quite a good one for leaders, managers of creative teams. Online marketing for creatives. Even these days I teach presentation skills. So there's a lot of agencies, for instance, where they've got their creative team who the client wants to see the creatives do the presentation. The creatives are not so keen on doing that. They'd rather be hiding behind the Macs. But so I help them. I show them how you can actually inject some creativity into your presentation and actually be a very engaging presenter, and maybe a refreshing change from some of the more corporate presentations that are out there.
Well, that's interesting, because obviously when you talk to creatives, that could be like, I speak to a lot of authors, but you also speak to corporates, don't you, about, like you just said, agencies and stuff.
Yeah.
You actually have two different audiences. Would you say that?
Yeah, I think that's true. And I used to be, I work with really corporate clients, like, telecoms and transport authorities and places like that. So I had to wear a suit in those days. But these days it's nearly all in the creative industries. The corporate clients tend to be advertising agencies, TV broadcasters, film organisations, that kind of thing. So it's kind of the same audience, but in a slightly different context, because creativity's, again, still at the heart of the conversation.
Yeah, and just on a side topic, so what do you wear? Do you have a special speaking set of clothes?
Well, a tip I got somewhere is that you should always be slightly better dressed than your audience, or at least not slightly worse dressed than the audience. So I make an effort. I have a nice shirt and trousers, and it's not the complete creative uniform of scruffy jeans and t-shirts. So yeah, I do dress up a bit. But and again, it wouldn't really make sense for me to have the whole suit and tie thing these days.
No, fair enough. And then just going back to how you got started, so you learned by doing, along with your kind of mentor. Was that for free, or was he paying you at that point?
I was getting paid to work on the course, and basically my original contract was that I would be there to assist during activities, because if a lot of the kind of training I do, obviously with psychotherapy, it's hands-on activities. You've got to show that you can do it, so people would pair up and do an activity. And the trainer's eyes can't be everywhere at once, so I would be there to go around and give feedback on activities. But then it was a good opportunity to kind of segue into standing up at the front of the class and presenting.
But did you do a lot of speaking for free before you got more speaking, professional speaking gigs as such, or did you learn in any other way or go on any courses, that type of thing?
I went on a good course. I think it was about two or 3 day intensive course. I think it was NLP based, and that was good. But a lot of it was really I didn't really do a lot of speaking for free. I went from the psychotherapy to corporate training. I got invited to go and do some training at Vodafone, I think was the first one. And again, there was a main trainer and I was the assistant trainer, and I would do bits, and then I did a bit more, and I ended up actually taking over the company in the end. and being the main trainer, and that was what I was doing. So it was, yeah, I don't. The good news is it was paid from the beginning. I guess the bad news is with that, you're kind of, well, you better be good.
Yeah, well, exactly. And of course, one of the biggest questions is how do people get into it? And I think, your way is possibly not how most people get into it. I mean, I certainly spoke a lot for free at the beginning. But no, it's great to hear that you've been earning a living since the beginning.
Well, also, I would say because I still get asked to speak for free, and I usually say no. And I would be really clear, if you are speaking for free, be clear of what you're doing it for. If you're doing it for practice, then that's great.
Yeah, at the beginning, yeah.
If you're doing it for business opportunities or to sell something else, I would really slow down and ask a lot of questions about the organizer, about who's going to be in the audience, what their expectations are, whether it's okay to mention what you do, and how because some places some conferences will say we don't have any pitching from the stage, which is great as long as they're paying me.
Yeah.
And I can put my website up there, but there's a real etiquette a lot of the time. And also, I have to say, the number of times somebody has said, "Oh, we'd like you to speak for free, but it's a real opportunity," and I nearly always find there's better opportunities for some reason seem to come out of places that actually pay me.
Oh.
Now, there's something, I don't know what that is. Maybe it's something to do with the amount of commitment that they're showing, and the value, and who they're getting to show up. I don't know. So if you just want the practice, then that's great. But if you're looking at it as part of your business model, then I would just be really clear about what you can expect to get out of it.
No, that's fantastic. And we're going to come back to money a bit later. But in terms of their asking questions of the organizer, so if we go through the sort of end-to-end process, so somebody's contacted you, how do you start off that initial engagement and sort of finding out everything you need to do? Do you do a survey, that type of thing?
So, you mean of the audience or of the person who's engaging me?
Either.
Either. Okay. Well, I'll give you an instance, or an example of abortive negotiations recently. So somebody emailed me a couple of weeks ago, "Hey Mark, really love what you do. Think you'd be perfect for our audience. I would like you to come in and speak." And it was something like, "Yeah, we really value your work, but we don't have any budget for this. But we think it's a really good opportunity because you can be in front of all these people." And I said, "Well, I emailed back and I said, "Well, look, I don't normally speak for free. Who are these people? How many people in the audience? What kind of people can I expect?" And I haven't got a reply. So that tells me that was a pretty good filter to have in place. Because if they can't even be bothered to reply to an email, it really doesn't suggest a high level of organisation and commitment. So the first thing I always want to know, whether it's paid or not, I mean, it's who is in the audience, what do they want, why are they there, why do you want me, what do you think I can bring to the table, what would make it a fantastic event for them? Because as long as you stay focused on the audience, then it should go well. I mean, audiences will forgive a lot, but one thing they won't forgive is if you don't really seem to know who they or care who they are or have thought about what they want. So I'm always thinking, why are these people going to be in this room? What have they come for? How can I make sure I give that to them? So that's the first thing that I want to know. And then I kind of go from there to, well, here's a topic that, I've presented a few times. Do you think this would be a good fit? And we talk about that. So it really starts with the audience and then reverse engineer.
Right, back from there.
And I kind of think about, what Seth Godin said. He said, if you're not going to change my mind and change my life and make me go and do something different, why are you boring me with a presentation? Why not just send an email? So I always think with that question, well, who is it? What do they want? And what do I want them to know and believe? And what do I want them to do at the end? And that is the editor for everything else I do. Nothing gets into the presentation if it doesn't help persuade them of the value of that course of action. So.
No, that's fantastic. And then do you, when you're discussing with the organizer, do you ask questions about the actual practicalities, anything about technical stuff, that type of thing?
I tell them what I need.
Okay, which is?
Well, it's fairly simple, but I think it's an important point. I don't ask, what have you got?
Mm.
I say, this is what I need if you want me to come.
Mm.
Oh, I don't know if we can do that. Everybody stands behind the lectern. Well, I'm afraid I don't. You know, if you see me present, I'm trying to stay in the middle of your screen today, but when I actually present, I walk and I talk and I move about. You know, I did one session where they said, well, there's be a camera, and if you could just move between these two lines on the floor, and they were like 30 inches apart, and I said no. So you wouldn't even get my arms in if I do that. So I always, and this is an important point, as a presenter, you need to own the space. It's your responsibility to make sure that the people who come and see you have a fantastic experience. And therefore, you need to take charge of that space, even if it's a client's office, even if it's somebody else's conference. For the 30 minutes or the hour or however long you are occupying that space, it's yours. So right from the beginning, you need to say, this is the way the room needs to be laid out. You know, and if I say we can't have any big table, boardroom. So if I'm doing a corporate one, I'll say no boardroom table in the middle of the room.
Yeah.
Oh, but it's always there. I said, well, it's either me or the table. You know.
That's great.
We'll
And
find
then,
another venue.
yeah. So what are you asking for? You're asking for like a projector and
Oh, right. It's fairly simple because I deliberately have low tech slides and I never connect to the internet after one horrendous incident.
Yeah. Or video or audio, right?
I don't do any of that. And also, I think in terms of presentation, it's really good to keep it simple. So if I use slides, and I don't always, then they're just flat slides, no transitions or video or anything like that. And so basically I say, I'll bring an iPad and the adapter. You need to have a projector. And I need to have a table where I can put my stuff. I don't want to be behind a lectern. If it's a microphone, it needs to be a clip-on one that I can walk around with. And there is an enormous great thing sticking out.
That's great. And do you often negotiate sales of your books within the speaking fee, I guess?
Well, this is a new one for me, Joe, because I've only had the actual paperback of the book about 6 months a year. So maybe you would know more about this. So sometimes I'll say to a client, you know, if it's a small audience, then I'll just build that into the fee. If it's a bigger audience, then I'll just talk about, well, look, I can get you 100 copies of the book at X price, you know, that kind of thing. But any tips you have on how to sell books from presentations would be very welcome.
Oh, yes, another time. Okay, so once you've prepped the event, let's talk about, you've done the arrangements and things, about preparing for the event. So you've got a topic, but do you take an existing slide deck and change it, or how do you actually prepare for the specific event?
Right. Well, there's two basic jobs as far as I'm concerned. One is a completely bespoke presentation where I'm starting from scratch. And another one is taking an existing workshop like time management for creative people or creative presentation skills and adjusting that for the particular audience. So, you know, I would talk to them. There's a few questions I'll find out in order to adapt it. But it's basically they're going to be a pre-existing slide deck in that case, and then I adjust it. If I'm starting from scratch, then, you know, I really start from scratch. And also, I never start with the slides. I always start with analog, and I always start with the structure. Well, actually, no, there's two ways I can go. Either I'll start with a story, because storytelling is a big part of what I do in terms of how to engage an audience, or I'll start with the structure, which is what are the 3 or most 4 big ideas they really need to get. And until I've got the structure and a sense of the story, and I'm not going to go anywhere near Keynote, which is what I use for slides. So another important thing is I should be able to do the presentation whether or not the projector explodes and the slides crash. You know, I shouldn't be looking to read my presentation off a slide deck. So to me, having that structure. So if there's 3 key points I'm going to make today, then they will be burned into my brain by the time I stand up on stage. So if all else fails, I will be able to kind of reconstruct it from that. So that's where I start, and then I find stories that fit around that. Very often I think, okay, so for me, a presentation or a training, I'm there to solve a problem for the audience. That's the way I think about it. There's no point me being there unless I'm going to help them. So they've got a problem, and I need to somehow dramatize the problem, make them really aware of it, even if, sometimes it may have been there kind of subconsciously. Make them really aware of the drama, the value, the importance of the problem, and then obviously go to a solution. And so once I'm thinking about that problem, then the question I ask myself is, who does this remind me of? Because when you've got who, you've got a person, you've got a character, and you've got a story. Mm-hmm. And it can be the oddest analogy that comes up. Sometimes it's fairly obvious. So if I'm talking about time management, for instance, I will talk about how disorganized I used to be years ago when I was just struggling. I was on the hamster wheel of email and phone calls coming in. I wasn't getting anything done, and my to-do list were like little curled up post-its that had fallen down behind the desk, and it was just a nightmare. So I tell that story, and audiences usually, when I'm scrabbling around on the floor for the post-its, I look up and there's people who are like, that's me. So it's fairly obvious that they can relate to that. And once you've shown them, hey, I'm a human being, I've had this problem too, and you know what, I've got a solution, then they will be eager for that. So you get them involved emotionally by telling a story like that they can relate to. And of course, stories generally have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And generally, good idea to go for comedy, not tragedy, in a presentation. You don't want to leave them down here. And so comedy's always got a happy ending. There's always a resolution. So that's where you want to leave audiences. And so you've taken them on that journey and you've shown them the way, and they will go away, they'll remember the story.
Yeah. No, absolutely. No, that's great. I just want to wind you back a bit to before the actual event itself. So you've arranged all the practicalities. Do you have any sort of personal rituals or ways that you prepare yourself before you listen to pumping music or something like that? Ways to get yourself in the kind of speaking mood, or how do you switch into that?
Yeah, well, I'm a big believer in rituals. I think I use them for all kinds of things. I use it for writing to get myself in the right frame of mind. Certainly use it for speaking. And so let's see, what do I do? Well, one of the things I do is when I arrive, I arrange the room the way I want it to be. And quite often it hasn't been arranged the way I said it should be. And so you have to kind of say, no, it's got to be this way. So you move the chair. So I'll move the chairs around. So for instance, I always have chairs in a semicircle if I'm doing a training. If it's a theatre, then they're already there. And then I'll have table over here with the iPad and slides and my notes. And then I'll have usually one flip chart on the other side and pens and stuff laid out. And then I kind of look around the room and it's just like I'm home. It's like this is my living room almost. I've been in this space that I've created on so many different occasions that I instantly feel, okay, so this is now my space. So I'd say even just arranging the furniture can be part of your ritual. Now, another thing I do that might sound a bit woo-woo, but it really works, is I go through a visualization routine where I imagine opening up the chakras in my body, and then the last thing I do is I really go into present awareness. So I'm really looking, listening, feeling, going into my peripheral vision, which is a very good way to draw introverts out. And I imagine my presence literally filling the whole room. And when I coach clients on this, I get into it, and they're like, because, particularly us Brits, our personal space tends to be about this big. And when you're on stage, it needs to be as big as the room. You need to fill the room. Metaphorically, you need to fill the room. Sorry, I can't help fighting the good fight against misuse of literally. But metaphorically, you need to fill the room. You need to get the sense that if a door opens behind you, you feel it. Mm-hmm. If somebody walks in right up there, you feel it. You're responsible for everyone in the room, and it really does open you out. You know, that you're 300 feet wide.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, once I've gone through all of that and had some coffee, then I'm ready to go.
Fantastic. Well, I think there is we are in a way performing. Could you talk to, the difference between you as speaker versus you as normally you? Is it like 150% you or something?
Well, it's certainly 150% me, but it's a different aspect of me. It's like, okay, so last year I was invited to go to Boston to speak at the How Design Conference. And I was talking to Andy Epstein, who hired me for it. And I was saying, so how many people will be in the audience? He said, about 600 or 700. And I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. And that's a bit bigger than I'd spoken to before. Mm. And I was talking to a friend about it over a drink a few days later, and he said, are you nervous? And I said, no, not really, because it's not me who's going to have to do it. Because it's Mark, the presenter, will be the person sitting here. Okay, so now I'm talking to you. I'm aware this is being recorded, so I'm more outgoing than I was half an hour ago when I've just sat typing on the computer. But if I were up on stage, I would be much more animated, and that the presenter character would come out. So, and I've kind of created that through practice and suffering and trial and error. But I would say that's still me, because all our little personalities are things we created. Are they not?
Oh, I totally agree. And I'm just wondering, as I hear you speak about that and also about the presence thing, one of the things that happens to me at the end of a very big day is I almost feel I'm physically vibrating with kind of, and maybe that's amped up energy or something. Do you ever experience anything like that? Or any tips?
You get a real high from it. I mean, this is if anybody's sat there listening to this thinking, I don't know, I feel really nervous about public speaking, I really wish I didn't have to do it. It is fantastic. Really, once you get into it, it's you get such a high from it. And, if we look at the research, it's always in the top 10 or the top 5 or the top 3 things that scare the living daylights out of human beings, usually slightly ahead of death.
Yeah.
And, mice and spiders being at the top. But actually, it's easily the top 5 things I really enjoy doing in my business. Because it is such good fun. I wouldn't want to do it all day, every day. But when I do it, I really enjoy it.
And also it's about helping people too, right?
Well, there's that. There's the feeling that, I made a difference today. And especially if you spend a lot of time on the internet firing off emails and stuff, and it just well, it is not. You might meet somebody months later. I read your emails every week. They really changed my life. And I'm like, well, that's really nice to know. I didn't know that. But when you're with an audience, you really see the difference that you've made. And when people come up to you afterwards and they say, "Thank you. I really felt that you were talking to me. That really had an impact on me. I'm going to go and do this or that differently." You just think, well, yeah, it was really worth getting out of bed this morning.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Okay, and then in the actual event itself, you've talked about slides, you've talked about stories. Do you have any other tips, I guess, for dealing with people in events? Because obviously we can do whatever we like, but sometimes people can go a bit wrong. Any tips there?
You mean audience members?
Yeah, I mean like the audience can sometimes not do what you expect or what you want.
Yeah. I think the toughest experience for me was doing corporate trainings years ago when people were told they had to come to the training, and some of them made it very clear that they did not want to come to the training and they thought it was a waste of time. So if you've got somebody who's aggressively sitting there at the front, being like this, so at a certain point you've got to just go toe to toe and show that you're not going to be intimidated by that. But also, what I generally like to do is try and empathise. I mean, if somebody's being difficult, in inverted commas, there's usually a reason. There's something, and it's not about you, because how could it be? You only just walked in the room. But I will usually try and find something to empathise with and agree with, even if it's only, well, okay, it sounds like you're feeling pretty frustrated about that, right? Okay, let's see if there's something I can say that would help you with it. Now, they may not be 100% satisfied with the answer, but even if you can get them to say, yeah, I'm really angry, then they've agreed with you. You say, so hang on, you sound quite frustrated, quite upset. Yeah, too, right? Yeah, okay, well, I can understand why you would be. And then you're kind of on the same side at that point, or at least there's a bit of neutral space. So you always treat them with respect, because even if you're right and they're wrong, and you can prove it, and you can win the argument, the danger is you win the argument, you lose the audience. Because they see you're in a position of power, and it's just somebody from the audience having a bad day, whatever. If you stomp all over them, what are the rest of the audience going to think? What did you do to that person? And the other thing is, if you're really graceful and you try and listen and understand it, and speak to their frustration or whatever it is that they're putting out there, the audience will love you for it, because they're all sat there going, God, I'm glad I didn't have to deal with that. I wonder how he. Oh gosh, didn't you feel for him? And people will come and say, I really felt you when you had to deal with that guy. He's like it with everybody. So just don't take it personally, try and be graceful, try and listen, look for something to agree with, and then see if you can lead it somewhere a bit more constructive.
And afterwards, so when you finished, sorry, I'm getting an echo again. Oh, no, it's gone again. Okay, yeah. So afterwards, when you finished, do you send any kind of feedback forms? Do you ask for testimonials? How do you manage the after process?
Okay, so this is really important. Whenever I speak, I always want to make sure that the audience has some kind of written material as a summary. I never send the slides, and quite often conference organisers say, can you send the slides? And I say no. Oh, well, we want to give it to the conference delegates. And I said, well, my slides are useless for that, because they're pictures with about 3 words maximum, and people will read it and go, what? And this is one reason why people fill it with bullets, because they think, oh, it's going to be printed, I'd better put loads of text in. But what I do is I create a separate document for that, because you want to avoid what Gar Reynolds, Mr. Presentation Zen, he calls it a slidument. You end up with something that's a Frankenstein's monster. It's not really good document because it's slides, but it's not really good slides because it's got too much text. So I have slides, which are usually very visual, and I have a written summary. So it may be an ebook, it may be the actual book. Some of my courses, there's like an online version of it in the private clients area of my website. So I always want to make sure, this is one of the first things I'll say to the audience, look, you don't worry, you don't have to write all this down. I'm going to give you a summary of it afterwards. You just relax. And they really like that, because it means they can just focus on me and what I'm saying. So that's for the audience. In terms of the organizer, I'll always ask, how do we do feedback? Usually they will have some kind of formal feedback process themselves, and then they share it with me, and I look at that and look what I can learn from it. So I talk to the organizer about that. But I always want to know. I want to know, how did it go down? What was helpful? What wasn't so helpful? What did people not get? You can learn a lot from that.
Oh, definitely. I think it's so important. So a couple of questions around the business side. Can we talk about money? And we don't need to give exact amounts, but how do you decide what to charge, and how can people take that figure upwards?
Well, I think in terms of, how I decided, I guess I found out what we were charging years ago when I was doing corporate training, so I took that as a benchmark. Benchmarking, I think, is really good. If you can find out somehow what other people are charging, it doesn't mean to say you charge the same as them. You might deliberately want to charge a bit more, because, again, that's another filter. If people come to you and say, we don't really want to pay that, we only pay this, then you've kind of got to have another really good reason for doing it, other than the fee. And in terms of pushing it upwards, really, it's about being unique and delivering value that no one else can easily replicate. So I quite often get a phone call. In fact, I had one from somewhere in Eastern Europe this week saying, well, there's loads of time management courses, but yours is the first one we found about time management for creatives. Would you consider flying over here to do it? I said, yeah, sure. So, and obviously there's a fee that goes with that. So
plus expenses.
Sorry?
Plus expenses.
Oh, yeah, of course. But if it's something that they can get lots of other speakers to do, then it's going to be harder for you to get a higher fee. But if you are the only person who can do this, then you get a lot. And this is why authors, it's such a great thing. If they want the author of book X, then they've got to get you, because there's not more than one author.
Yeah. No, absolutely. No, and it's funny you said, of course, expenses, of course. I've had people say, oh, I thought expenses were included in the fee.
Yeah. I mean,
that should always be on top.
Yes.
Okay, and then you mentioned there that you had a phone call from Eastern Europe, and you've mentioned America, and all these places. How do these people find you, and how can other people attract speaking work?
Through the magic of the internet.
More specifically?
Well, more specifically, I've been blogging for about 8 years now, and I have also created landing pages for each of my courses. There's been a bit of search engine optimization I've done. Not a huge amount, but a bit on some aspects of my websites. So quite often, speaking engagements quite often come through Google. Somebody searches for a particular kind of topic, and I come up, and then they contact me. So that's one big way. Another one is through either what I call digital referrals. So people who have been subscribing to the blog or the newsletter for a long time, and they say, hey, we wanted a workshop, and you were the first person I thought of because I've been reading your stuff about this. Would you come in? The book is another really good one. People say, I found your book on Amazon. We think you'd be great to talk about either the book or something related. And then the other one is just good old-fashioned referral from previous clients, who either they're organising another conference or another event, or they know somebody at another agency or whatever, word gets around. So, and the best one to get is when somebody emails you and say, I saw you speak at X event, and I really enjoyed it. I would really like you to come and speak at ours, because then you say, well, that's actually the speaking selling itself.
Yeah, exactly. And all of that takes time, right? I mean, that didn't happen right at the beginning.
Yeah, so it does take a bit of time. But, you can be bold. I mean, I did once upon a time, it was just me and the telephone and a list of phone numbers, and I rang enough HR directors until I got the business. Now, I don't necessarily recommend that. It was a bit like doing surgery without an anaesthetic. But, because sales without marketing is a bit like that.
Yeah.
But it can work if you're bold enough or stupid enough, I was stupid enough, if you're bold enough.
That's something as an introvert I will not do. I'm scared of that, and I don't want to do that. So that's why the internet for me and social media is a way to get at speaking without doing that.
Well, when I discovered blogging, I thought, great, that's like cold calling for introverts.
Yeah, exactly.
Except it's not cold calling. It's when people come to you, and this is generally true. I know that this is one thing you talk about. When you build your brand, opportunities come to you. And so if you are, it's so much better for somebody to ring you than you ring them.
Yeah.
So anything you can do to build your authority, get the books out, get the blog out, get the newsletter out, speak at another event, and then have somebody come up to you afterwards, then you're in a much better position than going cap in hand to somebody trying to get a speaking gig.
Absolutely. And so I guess you talked a bit about fun at the beginning, but what would you say are the benefits for introverts specifically, or any creatives in professional speaking?
Well, number one, it's a huge confidence boost. When you know you can do it, and most people are frightened to do it, then you do feel, and you also, know what it costs you, because everybody's scared when they start. I was terrified when I started out, but I did it in spite of that. And I learned to get a bit better and a bit better, and it got a bit less scary and a bit less scary. So I would say the confidence is huge boost to that. The other thing is opportunities. If you can be the person in the room, say you're in a team, you're the person whose hands go up, we need someone to do a presentation. Well, instantly everybody in that team loves you. If you're an author and you get invited to speak at a conference, again, that just helps to build your authority, build your brand. It positions you as, and I'm sure you've had this, Joe, when people come up, they see you speak, and then they come up to you afterwards. So there's loads. The phone call from Eastern Europe, the 2 trips to America last year, it wouldn't have happened, So you get to see a bit of the world, and in a really nice way, because you arrive and you're a bit of a VIP. They want to look after you and make sure everything's all right. Your hotel, your taxi, all of that's taken care of. So yeah, it's definitely perks to that. And another really good thing is if it's a good conference and there's a speakers networking event, that is fantastic, because then you're in a room with some really smart people and you have a lot of fun and you make some good connections and you have some great conversations.
I totally agree. The peer network is fantastic, definitely. And I did also want to ask you, as a poet and a creative person yourself, the difference between professional speaking and performing your own written work. So for you, performing a poem or something like that, what do you see the difference in those two activities, and why might someone like me have a problem with one of those? And maybe you do
just
too,
hypothetically speaking, right? Well, I would say it's approximately 10 times as scary to read one of my own poems as it is to stand up and do a professional presentation. Now, it used to be a lot scarier when I didn't read the poems so much. But it's just because it's more personal.
Yeah.
It really is like standing up naked in front of an audience. And so it just feels you're that much more exposed. But actually, again, when you relax into it, it's much better because of that. One of my mantras I use in the book is: the bigger the dream, the bigger the fear. So the bad news is, if you experience a lot of fear, that's probably quite likely a sign of where you need to go next, creatively or professionally. Now, the good news is, if you can deal with the fear, then there's a really nice surprise on the other side of it, which is when, I love the professional speaking I do, don't get me wrong, but poetry is much closer to my heart. So when I'm up there and I'm reading a poem and I relax and I get into it, and, people come up afterwards and say, wow, I really liked your poem, you feel that you've connected in quite an extraordinary way with people. So, but then I guess the challenge is to make this professional speaking, to kind of up the ante on that. So there's always ways again, it's a creative process doing these presentations. There's always a way to improve it and challenge yourself to go further as a speaker. So I guess that's one challenge that I've stumbled upon for myself today.
Fantastic. Right, Mark, where can people find you and your books and your speaking online?
Okay, well, the book is Resilience. That's all about dealing with rejection and criticism when you are a creative of any description. That's at lateralaction.com/resilience, and it's on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and Apple and all of those good places. My speaking workshops, my training workshops are mostly at wishfulthinking.co.uk. And then lateralaction.com is where my main creativity blog is, and the stuff about my one-to-one coaching.
Brilliant. Well, thanks for your time, Mark. That was ace.
My pleasure. Thanks, Joe. Always a pleasure to talk to you.